Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Kieran Collins, and we're delighted to have Des Mythen on as well, previewing the All Ireland final for 2026. Lads, how are things?
Good, Mark.
Good, not too bad.
Great. Des, great to have you on again. How's the club year gone for you so far this year?
It's gone okay. We've played 2 games in the championship. We got to the league semi-final and played 2 games in the championship. We won one against Rapparees. We lost on there Sunday week ago again. Ferns could have won it, but we could have lost the first one, I suppose, as well. But not too bad. Like we were disappointed. We probably wouldn't have 2 wins, because we're playing Allgate next and we're playing Rathmuir and playing Dunbarton. So the group is very hard. Like, if you don't pick up the wins, you're struggling to probably qualify, or you could be in trouble in regard of relegation. So in Wexford hurling, there's probably 6 or 7 teams of a pretty similar standard. So it's you could be dragged in, or you could get to a semi-final pretty handy, or you could get to a relegation final. So not too bad. We've a young team probably now we're coming. We've probably 5 or 6 lads who didn't start last year. We're starting this year, and that's the success of the previous underage teams in the last 3 or 4 years. I think they've won the last 2 or 3 minors, and probably a good minor team this year again. So we've a conveyor belt of kind of lads coming, but they're probably we've a lot of maybe young lads. So maybe in a couple of years we'll be a bit stronger maybe than we are now. Not saying that we're not strong now, but I think 2 or 3 years time these lads will probably mature into top class players.
No, absolutely does. No, it's great to see the pathway emerging there in All Ireland anyway, and look, we wish you well on the senior championship. Thanks very much. I suppose guys will focus in on the 2026 All Ireland senior hurling final. I suppose, Kieran, we'll get your thoughts first off. Limerick Galway, it's a rerun of 2018. I know last week we kind of said maybe a role reversal here in terms of maybe Galway being the up and coming team against Limerick, who've kind of done it and won All Ireland medals. I suppose, get your thoughts initially in terms of the game and what you're most looking forward to in terms of matchups.
Yeah, I suppose in ways it is a reversal. Like Limerick were the young team coming up in 18. Galway had their All Ireland one year before, and I suppose we probably had lost a bit of form that they had in 17. In 18, they kind of probably scraped through some games. I think for me, just thinking about it for the last, I suppose the last week or so, Galway probably to me are still a little bit of we don't know how good they are, because you look at the Leinster final. I think Dublin were, they weren't the Dublin team we had seen up to that point in the championship. They were a real poor performance, and then I suppose the Cork game in the semi-final, Galway got a blistering start. Cork got back into it. You'd imagine at that stage, the team like Cork, with the momentum they had, would have kicked on. They didn't. They allowed Galway to claw that lead back before half time, and from there, Galway kicked from home. But you do have to kind of question, was it all Galway, or was it the heads dropped in Cork? I think for me, there's a little bit of, we don't know how good they are yet. Now, looking at stats, just quickly there before you come on, like the last 2 games, they've had 48 shots in both games. So that's Limerick numbers we're talking there, and it's the efficiency. 58% shot efficiency against Cork, 68% against Dublin in the Leinster final. So if they can bring that, to create that amount of shots against Limerick and bring that efficiency, Limerick are really going to have to up their game on games gone by. We strip back Limerick's last 2 games were from play. They had 26 shots against Clare, only 42% shot efficiency from that game. And against Cork in the Munster final, they created 25 shots from play, only scoring 12, which is 45%. So you're talking a discrepancy there of 20% on Galway's last 2 games. So if Galway are as good as their form line shows, it's going to be a hell of a game, and there won't be much in it.
Absolutely. Des, we'll get you in there, I suppose.
Yeah.
What's your initial thoughts on the All Ireland final?
My initial thoughts are that I think the big thing in my head is the system that Galway are kind of playing, in regard of, I think, because they're withdrawn and only playing one man up top in Rabbit, that's the big conundrum that teams are I don't think that Galway team on paper is, if they played a conventional maybe 2 man inside, 1 man on the D, and then half normal, half forward line, I don't think they're going to be getting to an All-Ireland final. I think that what teams are struggling at the minute again, Galway, is what to do. I think they're talking on the telly a good bit there the last few weeks, whether you pick up lads out the field or you hold the lad back and mind one-on-one, and you're picking your poison either way, because if they can get scores out the field, if you don't pick them up or if you don't get the cover, then it's one-on-one inside. So I think that's the big thing in my head, where I think Limerick are probably getting 2 weeks now. They know the way Galway play. They're not going to change the way they're playing. They're going to have a huge work rate, and I think they'll pick a team, Limerick, where they're going to match them, I think, man for man out the field and not worry about getting cover. That's in my head. That's what they'll do. I think the Limerick work rate then will probably wear down a Galway, because I don't think the Cork didn't bring it the last day. Dublin definitely didn't bring it in the Leinster final. And I still think that Galway team is a system-based team. It's not that they're unreal in certain areas. It's just the system is very hard to know what to do again. I know if I was a coach there and I'm looking at Galway, you're thinking in your head, if you don't follow them, they're going to pick up, because the likes of Cottle Mannion and these lads, you can't leave them loose, because they'll get on 20 balls in the match or 25 balls in the match, and they'll be spraying balls around. So I'd say Limerick will match them up pretty well. They'll try and swarm the middle area and get joy that way. But I think the 2 weeks for Limerick preparing, and sure, Kinnerk and John Kiley and Shawnee O'Donnell, he was with us with Owlert in 2015 when we won a Leinster title. I know the way he works, and they'll be breaking down that Galway analysis pretty in depth. I'd say the focus will be matching them man for man. I said that probably to me will be moving maybe Keane Lynch to centre forward, playing Darragh O'Donovan, Adam English in the middle of the field, and that means one of the forwards is going to miss out, whoever that is. There's maybe three of them probably in the chopping block from the last day. Like, Cottle O'Neill didn't do much and Gallan didn't do much. Gallan will be on, but I think I'd love to go. I haven't got a ticket yet, so I that's the big thing where I'll be going to. I'm wondering what Limerick are going to do with this system, how they're going to deal with Galway, because I think Limerick or Galway are not going to be able to deal with Limerick if Limerick get going, in regard of if they break down their system. Limerick will win this match by 5 or 6 points. If Limerick can't come to terms with Galway running the ball and their athleticism, that's the other thing now with the weather. Like, you have probably 30 degrees now at the minute on Sunday. The one thing about that Limerick thing, I think they're leggier than they have been in previous years. They've a lot of lads with mileage of the similar era, and I know myself, when you have the same amount of players of the same age, and they mightn't be that old, you have a lot of miles on the clock, and that's where Galway can get joy. It's a physicality thing for Galway in regard of running the ball, but that's the big thing for me.
Yeah, no, Des, great insights. And I suppose, Kieran, there is a conundrum here for Limerick, how to solve this Galway system. I suppose, how do you feel they'll tackle it on Sunday?
I think Des touching it there. I think it'll be the middle third is where the battle is going to be, and I think Limerick need to, I suppose, what cleared it to Limerick in the middle third and all over the field really, I suppose, in that first half, get in their face, put them under pressure, not give them time on the ball. Like, you're looking at Galway taking shots from outside the 65 and a good distance from goal is not allowing them to have that time on the ball, put the pressure on. Like, when you're playing one man inside, and to be fair, you have to commend Rabbit, like, for a young lad to be able to hold up on his own in there. It's not every player could do it. Real tough role, and like against Cork, I suppose we saw how well he's doing in it. But I think Limerick just need to get in their faces, apply real pressure. I suppose it's probably a system that Galway are, they're probably still, like, Limerick are playing to a system themselves, but they're at it now, the bones of 9 years. You have to ask question marks of what Galway are doing. And then if the question marks seep into the team, did the cracks then appear? But look, you have to be nothing but, commend, I suppose, Galway. Like, I think it's given certain players a new lease of life. Like, you look at Tom Monaghan, who, good hurler, but he scored 11 points from play the last 2 games. I touched on Ronan Glennon the last day. He was my man of the match against Cork. He was a really, really good game wing back. The younger lads like Darren Erie, we mentioned Rabbit, Yeah, Rory Burke, if they can get back him, just pace, no fear, and they will just run at Limerick. Conor Whelan has been reignited this year again, scoring, I think, 5 points for the last 2 days as well. Cathal Mannion, I mentioned the last day, you'd like to see him closer to goal because you know how good he is, but that position he's playing, he's just playing it so well. He's such a good ball striker. I suppose the one worry Galway might have is Dahi Burke looked in big trouble the last day for me. 2 weeks is a short time. I know Joe Canning alluded he didn't get the perfect preparation before the game, carrying a knock, but 2 weeks after a game, it's not an awful long time. And we see the question marks that the likes of a Hegarty posed to Clare in the second half in the semi-final. How do Galway handle that? So I suppose there's two sides of the coin, really. But for me, for Limerick point of view, player form has been a little bit off. I think our inside forward line hasn't been converting enough chances. Aaron Gillan has been poor his last couple of games. Shane O'Brien, on and off, flattering to deceive. Cathal O'Neill, similar, he does some very good things and then could struggle to pick a ball up at times. You'd be hoping Cian Lynch will be back in from the start. And and Limerick's half back line, who've had a superb year. Kyle Hayes has been really growing into the year. I think since the Munster final, he's really looked like the player of old. It's to them. If they can dominate on Sunday like they have in many other days, Limerick stand a real fighting chance. But I suppose it's that system and still a little bit of unknown how they go about it. And I suppose until the game is over, until we're watching the game live, we don't know what Limerick are going to do to counteract it.
Des, will get you in here because I think Kieran touched upon my next question. I think the Clare game in the All Ireland semi-final maybe raised one or two questions in terms of maybe player positions. I've kind of jotted down here the full-back position, midfield, the full forward line, and also maybe Aidan O'Connor where he actually slots in. Do you see many changes from John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk heading into the final on Sunday?
Yeah, I only see one change, and that's maybe Dan Murphy is under pressure in the full back line, but I think they'll go with him on Rabbit probably because of his physical size. I don't see Sean Finn or Barry Nash picking him up, and Mike Casey's probably he's probably running on 5'10", 5'11", Rabbit 6'4". So I think the only change I can see from a Limerick team is Cian Lynch will be on that team. I'd imagine Darragh O'Donovan will play because of his work rate. He probably would be on the chopping block if Cian Lynch came into the middle of the field. But Adam English hasn't been starting. I don't know how he hasn't been starting because I think he's an unreal hurler. But I think they'll definitely go with him and with legs. And as I said, it's probably Cian Lynch going into the forwards then and going centre forward. He won't play anywhere else but centre forward. And that to me, but I just think with Galway, they might struggle with the likes of Garrod Hegarty, and aerially, and that's the half back line for Galway wouldn't be that strong. Cathal Mannion as well, or Pádraig Mannion, wing back. The only thing about dropping a Cathal O'Neill is he would have the legs on Pádraig Mannion. So I don't really know who's going to be dropped. I think Gillan has to play. As said, Kieran alluded to there. Dahi Burke to me is in big trouble. If he's in, he's definitely going to pick up Shane O'Brien or Aaron Gillan. To me, they have the beatings of him. With regard of they could be getting a couple of goals there if they get the right ball. And I think that's what Limerick will be focusing on the next few weeks. Will be peppering that full back line of Galway. But yeah, look, to answer your question, I don't see much changes with Limerick. I'd be very surprised other than one change. And as I said, I'm not sure who's going to miss out. Sure, Adam English missed out on one game. I think O'Brien missed out on another game. Cathal O'Neill seems to be playing every game. And look, he came into the semi-final after an injury, I think, for 3 or 4 weeks. He got hurt in the Munster final. So just thinking about it now, I think Cathal O'Neill probably will play because it's just the Pádraig Mannion thing in regard of he'll be able to an outball firm, the legs issue of trying to deal with the Galway half forwards coming back to pitch and the work rate. So just one change for me.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. Any thoughts there? Do you think John Kiley, Paul Kinnerk will throw a few curveballs here?
I think the idea with Adam English being on the bench is finishing strong. I think, I suppose the notion is that the likes of Darragh Donovan wouldn't have 70 minutes or 80 minutes in him. Probably nor would Cian Lynch at that level in midfield, but I think it's just bringing him in as a finisher. I do agree. He's a really good hurler, and it's probably legs that I suppose Limerick will need to match Galway. It's very hard for me. I've been watching Limerick all year, and I think I've said it a few times. I think Aidan O'Connor is actually better when he's in the full forward line. I think you see it against Clare there in the goal he got. He got himself a yard or two of space, and won the ball and finished very well. I think when he has played in there, which he did earlier in the league, I thought he looks more at home in that full forward line. But I think we've seen with Limerick in the past, they never generally make too many changes positionally, or change. They're not going to rewrite the script now on the last day of the year. I think they have a system that they play to in ways. Okay, they are going to look at Galway and what they do, but I think Limerick are kind of in ways a little bit bullish that if they play their own game and they hit their own metrics, that they are very metric driven. That if they play their own game, they get enough shots away, their efficiency is where it's supposed to be, their work rate, their tackling is where it's supposed to be. They see it that they win the game. So while they will afford Galway, they will look at them, but I think Limerick will probably look at themselves more, for the 2 weeks coming into the final. There is players with questionable form. I think Gillan is one of them. Shane O'Brien is one of them. We talked about it after the Clare game. To me, it looked like the two of them are making very, very similar runs, where I went back to that 21 All Ireland final against Cork, where Gillan and Shane Flanagan they ran them running ragged, especially in the first half with the runs off the ball. And I think if they can sort that out, Gillan has been on ball. You look back to the Munster final, just had possession but did silly things with it. He overcarried one ball, should have been tapped over the bar, went for the goal. Just I suppose it's a final. It's the biggest day of the year. What more motivation do you need to give a player? But I think just if they can get that cohesion right in the full forward line, as Des said, I think they can trouble Galway there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points there, guys. I suppose looking at the Galway team here, Des, who needs to stand out for you on Sunday for the Tribesmen to bridge that 2018 gap for Lee McCarthy?
I think, as I said, Galway are a system-based team more than you obviously need the individuals, but I think Galway depend less on maybe star players. They need the system going well. They need everybody working hard. They need to be running because there's so many touches to get that ball, to get a shot. They need the unforced errors need to be cut out from a Galway. So with Galway, that's where Limerick will be definitely at in their heads. We break down this ball, we turn them over, we'll get scores. And that's where Galway's game, the good weather now, is going to enable them maybe to not do as many unforced errors. But obviously, Cottle Mannion he's probably the orchestrator and coming back to field. At times he's going in as a sweeper and standing there. That doesn't suit to me down the far side then, because Limerick are probably the best team in the country at using the ball. So that might work again. I think Cork, because Cork to me systemically this year wasn't that great. Dublin to me were a little bit all over the place, but I don't think he can leave an extra man in the backs with Limerick, because I think they'll just use the ball too well to strike from distance. But look, obviously you're looking for Tom Monaghan, had a great year, but I think he'll be tracked a bit more this week. He hasn't been tracked, he's been let roam around too much. And I would have seen him at Wexford for a couple of years. If Tom Monaghan's not tracked, he'll pick up 4 or 5 points. If he's tracked, to me, he's vulnerable enough in regard of he's not the tidiest man in the world. He needs grass and he needs space to get into. But I think Conor Whelan, obviously, I think his game has changed. I don't think he's as dangerous as he was to get goals and points. It's kind of more of a workman performance. But I think Kieran touched on it there. Glennon wing back had a great game. He got 3 points in the final. If he's going on the same wing and he's picking up Gerard Hegarty, he'll have his hands full the other way. He won't be getting 3 points the next day. So the midfield for Galway as well, Colleen and Lee, they're more, as I said, system-based players in regard of their workmen. They're working hard. They're trying to get the ball off, runs off the shoulder. That's more or less their game. They're not taking that many shots and they're not doing that. So I think for Galway, one or two players, 3 players not performing and making errors is bad for Galway, whereas I think Limerick can afford, because of the way they play, maybe 3 or 4, 5 lads even not playing that well, and they still could pick up the scores because they're delivering more ball, if you get me. Whereas Galway are probably depending on working the ball and shooting from distance, and then maybe when they get to a good area, getting it into Rabbit. And obviously he's I think he has the beating to Dan Morrissey too. I think Dan Morrissey's been poor this year, and he wasn't on the team at the start of the year. I think Rabbit has the beatings of him. So if Galway can get good ball and get the right supply of ball into Rabbit, I think Limerick will be in trouble. But it's questionable whether the intensity of an All-Ireland final, the nervousness and the young Galway team, if they'll get the room to do that in Croke Park, and then whether their mind is not swayed by an All-Ireland final and making errors. That's where I think the first 15 minutes for Galway are vital in this match.
I think though, Des, when you look at Dan Morrissey, I think, to be fair to Will O'Donoghue, he provides great cover in that sixth position. But at the other end, my question is, do you think they put Dahi Burke at the Marmakin job, or does he go into that sixth position?
I wouldn't say Dahi Burke can go into the sixth position, and if Cian Lynch is centre forward, I would say Dahi Burke or Cian Lynch will just go to town on him with his movement. You know, I just think Dahi Burke will go into the full-back line. He'll play on O'Brien or Galan. And the other side, you're saying about Will O'Donoghue centre back, I don't think he'll get to sit too much and protect if Cottle Mannion's playing centre forward, because I think with Will O'Donoghue this match, I looked, as you know yourself, Kieran, we've been looking at teams in regard of their defensive way they're playing, and we looked at Limerick and we looked at Clare and we looked at Tipperary, and like Limerick at times this year are going man for man over the pitch. Like this is a new, I think somebody said in an interview a few weeks ago, hurling has changed now in regard of there's that's what Clare won All Ireland. They pressed all over the pitch. Limerick at times, even again Cork there in the Munster final, we looked at it. Will O'Donoghue was tracking Shane Barr in that match a bit. Other sometimes I think Colin Parkson asked Kyle Hayes about cheating, you know, basically going back to the and minding the full back line, and he said I couldn't cheat in the first half against Clare because they were so slick and it was so fast, whereas in the second half the forwards slowed down the Limerick or the Clare play, and that enabled them to maybe get back. So I think that's where Will O'Donoghue will be trying to obviously go back an odd time, but I think the pressure is going to come from Limerick in the middle third, and I think Cottle Mannion is going to get special treatment. That's what, to me, they should be doing. If they want to shut them down, there's no player capable on that Galway team of getting onto 20 balls to link the play like him, because Monaghan and these type of players are not that sort of more finishers rather than link players. Now, Arden Nyland didn't do much the last day. He's another one, like, who picks him up for Limerick? That's the thing I think Nyland could get. If Barry Nash is picking him up, you know, he's a good player and obviously a great player, but he gives you a little bit more space than maybe some of the other Limerick backs. So if he's playing out the field, then he could be the one to maybe link play. But look, we don't know. Maybe Galway will throw Cottle Mannion inside for a while and done us all in regard of what they're doing, and put Rabbit centre forward for a while, and that curbs Limerick everything they're after talking about for the first 10 minutes.
I think as well, like Aaron Nyland, he started the year very, very well. I think from play, he's probably flattered a little bit to deceive in the last couple of games.
Yeah.
It could be a case you could see Conor Cooney in there. Could see
Conor Cooney, yeah. I think he'll go with the legs maybe, but and then, as you said, Carl Cannon and Conor Cooney. But I think Galway, the way they are, I think it's very hard to. Burke is the only one who was hurt. He'd be the only one, to me, that would be probably coming into the team. If anybody was coming in, it'd be him, and that would be because he's athletic and he's able to carry ball. And I think Conor Cooney, you know, he's in the latter stages of his inter-county career. It's more of a when, like, again, Dublin coming on when the game opens up. So I presume Nyland, he might be under pressure, but then he's taking the freeze.
Yeah.
So you'd imagine he starts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's because, I mean, Nyland is the top scorer for Galway with 36 points. Majority of them have come from freeze place balls. Again, I do like the spread of scores from Galway here. If you take Aaron Nyland, he's 15% of the team scores. You're looking at Tom Monaghan, 12%. Conor Cooney, he's come on as a bench impact sub, 10%. Conor Whelan, Rory Burke, we haven't really talked about. Again, it would be a massive boost for Galway even to have him on the subs bench, just given his pace, 8%. So there is a nice spread of scores compared to Limerick, where Aidan O'Connor is leading that front with 32% of the scores. He has 60 points to his name so far this year. I suppose, Kieran, kind of coming back here to the half-back line as well for Limerick. It has been very dominant this year, as you mentioned. Dermot Burns has really improved as the year has gone on. Will O'Donoghue has really solidified himself as a half-back. Stallion, I would say. And then obviously you have Kyle Hayes on the other side. And I suppose for Galway, that's going to be the conundrum here, how to really break down that half-back line that's been so dominant this year.
Yeah, I think going back in the last probably 2 years, there was huge question marks on Dermot Burns especially, because Cork would have really targeted him, avoiding the Kyle Hayes' flank, especially on puckouts. But I think to a man, I think Dermot Burns this year has been back to, the form of old. Really solid back there. Will O'Donoghue probably would have had serious question marks over him playing six earlier in the year, but he has taken to it. He looks really solid. He's different to what Hannon was. Hannon was more of a, like a quarterback. So Will O'Donoghue is just that he's a rock back there that probably gels it all together. Kyle Hayes, we forget he was coming back from a serious injury, which he picked up in a club game. But I think as the year has gone on, he has, he hasn't put 70 minutes together, but he has shown signs. The last 20 minutes against Cork, I thought he was really good. Again, against Clare the last day, showed spells of what he can do. Probably not getting up the field as more, but, but still is. And I think that has been Limerick's, probably the half-back line this year has been their best line, a most consistent line as the year has gone on. I think Sean Finn has come back to his best this year. Another player that would have had question marks over the last 2 years. Barry Nash still, I suppose, provides that go-forward threat. But I think the half-back line could be the winning of that game. If Limerick were to win on Sunday, I think Limerick's half-back line, they have to get on top for that to happen. You look at Burns and his delivery qualities, he's a huge part of the team and how they play. Personally, I'd love to see Lynch go to 11. It hasn't happened this year. He has been playing midfield. But I think if Cian Lynch plays 11, he just opens up different avenues for the Limerick forwards. I think we've seen when he has played 11, the likes of Gerard Hegarty feeds off it. Back in the day, Tom Morrissey was there feeding off it. But I think like the Cathal O'Neill and Gerard Hegarty, you could see them having big parts in the game if Lynch does play 11. I suppose in the full forward line, I don't foresee much changes, but that one switch for me, Lynch to 11 and maybe Aidan O'Connor inside, could be the difference. Because you have to be, we have to be kind of open and honest about it. I think the last 3 games Limerick have played, they played Waterford for most spells of that game. Waterford were the better team. Limerick got 2 late-ish goals to put a gloss on the scoreline. I think they won by 9 in the end, but it wasn't a 9-point game. Waterford were bang there for most of it. We move on to the Munster final where, both teams had their struggles, I suppose, really, but maybe 7 or 8 minute period before half time where Limerick scored 4 or 5 points to reel that Cork lead of 6 points, to reel that down. That was the end of that game. But they did struggle over the line. I suppose they fell over the line. And again, against Clare. Clare brought huge intensity first half. Limerick could not deal with it. Like, call a spade a spade. Clare were the better team in the first half. Probably didn't show that in the scoreboard. Okay, their scoring prowess fell away in the second half. There was that black card decision that didn't go their way. But again, Limerick fell over the line. I have to commend them on the attitude to never give up. But, they are living on the edge the last couple of games. So, Galway will sense blood here. And as I said earlier, if Galway can reel off 45 to 50 shots with a good level of efficiency, Limerick really have to up what they have shown the last 3 games.
No, absolutely agree with you, Kieran. Certainly. I suppose, Des, you mentioned it, Sunday looks primed to be a scorcher of a day in Croke Park. Benches are going to play a huge part in this final. What side do you think has the better bench options, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I think both. I think we mentioned Galway's. I think, if Rory Burke is back there and he's a sub with Galway, you have him and you have Conor Cooney, you have Colin Cannon. That's 3 forwards that probably are on any other team in the county, and they're probably Colin Cannon. I'm not sure. Say he has an all-star. Say Conor Cooney has an all-star. Rory Burke was probably their best player. Until he hurt his hamstring earlier in the league, and then he hurt it again, getting that goal. in the Leinster final as well. So I think Galway's bench is strong. I think Galway's bench is probably a little bit stronger thinking about it now. Do you know, Limerick, obviously, we have a couple of players to come in there, whether the lads who are not on, whether it's Adam English or whether it's Darragh Donovan, whether it's Shane O'Brien, whether these, but not much more than that to come in from a Limerick now, I think. Do you know what I mean? I think they're basically dealing with 16, 17 players this year, and there doesn't seem Dan or Morrissey to come on as well, Tom Morrissey. But just Tom Morrissey now could start this match too. If they think Pádraig Mannion is wing back, might be thinking themselves, Tom Morrissey, he's capable of getting 4 or 5 points on Pádraig Mannion. So look, I think they're evenly matched. I don't think the bench is going to be. I think the first 20 minutes, first 15, 20 minutes in this match are the most important. And I think if Galway can stay in this match, they have a great chance if they stay with him in the first 20 minutes, because I think the legs are definitely with Galway. That's where the likes of last year in an All Ireland final, Tipperary stayed in the early doors. Everyone was thinking Cork are going to win this, stayed in the early doors, even went in 4 or 5 points down at half time, plugged away then just after half time, and then it opened up for them. So I think for Galway, if they can keep the work rate very strong, and for the first half anyway, keep in the game, they have a serious chance to win this, as I said, because the way their system is, it's going to be very athletically challenged for Limerick to keep in this game, in regard of if it's 40 minutes in this level, they're going to have worked very hard in that middle third. And if it's level and the space in Croke Park with the weather, I fancy Galway to win that. Do you know what I mean? I fancy Limerick to win the game now, because I just know the way they're going to be dealing with it in regard of their video analysis in a certain way. They have 2 weeks to prepare, and that to me was going to be big. They're dealing with player, and I think that's more of a rivalry thing where they couldn't get going. But I think with Galway, as I said, you're dealing with a system that they know it's not going to change, and that's where I think Limerick are going to evolve in regard of what they're doing, and they'll throw a spanner in the works. But if we go back to the Cork and Galway match, like Cork had so much possession in the back line in that match in the first 25, 30 minutes, and kind of were passive and passing the ball across and not doing much with it. But if you do that to Limerick will have been working on that now for the last 2 weeks, and they will know they're going to get that time, because the way Galway play out the field, they're giving you ball back the field, and they're leaving you there with it. With that Limerick team, you're launching ball into Aaron Gillan, O'Brien, these lads, they're going to be seriously dangerous. Whereas Cork don't probably have the ball winners to deal with that. Like if you play a short puck out again, if Galway are doing what they were doing the last day, and you're letting the short puck out go to the Limerick, we know Limerick go long on the second ball. If you put Garrod Hegarty in the square on them balls, I don't know who Galway are going to pick him up on that. And that's what Limerick could do from a puck out. Put Hegarty inside, go short to the cornerback, Barry Nash, go long. And to me, there's going to be chaos. Whereas Cork are trying to tread ball all game, and then it's breaking down. Just think, as I said, as a whole, to me in my head, it's a whole system thing in regard of Limerick break that system, they win the game. And if they can't in the first 40 minutes, I think it's Galway's game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, Des, wholeheartedly. And I suppose Kieran gets you in here as well. I mean, Des maybe touched upon it. In terms of the goalkeeper situation here, and the puck-out distribution is so critical in intercounty play at the moment. You've Dara Fahy, up-and-coming Galway keeper, and Nicky Quaid, who's completely established as one of the most elite goalkeepers we've ever seen. It's going to be a fascinating duel between these two, particularly regarding distribution.
I know Nicky, he always gets applauded for his puck-outs, and I think, a puck-out that could work for Limerick is where he's hitting space and a player running onto the ball, because it's going to be, that middle area is going to be fairly congested with players. I think Des onto one there, the likes of a Hegarty or even a Gillan inside in the square, because Gillan is such a good ball winner. You're putting long ball in on top of them. I suppose it's a threat for Galway that they have to deal with. The likes of Aidan O'Connor and Peter Casey trying to get onto the breaks of it. It's going to be intriguing. I think we are giving Galway their dues, but I suppose maybe a little bit biased here, but you have to look at Limerick's finals. They've won 17 from 18 finals they've been in. technically they didn't lose it. That one game was a drawn game last year, mostly final against Cork, where they lost in penalties. They drew in normal time after extra time. So that record, they've played good teams over the years, like to get to 18 finals and win 17. That I suppose that's something we're not mentioning either. It's just that the mindset of the players when they get to Croke Park, and they've had to dog it out some years. They've won it by good margins other years, but there is, I suppose, a factor that Galway would have a lot of young players where will the occasion get them. There's a lot of other factors aside from the tactics and everything of the game. There is all these factors. I just read there before he came on, John Kiley, Colin Patterson said that he had 63 meetings last year at the end of the year. Each meeting lasting 2 to 3 hours. He met every player, every backroom member. That's what shows the level of soul searching that went on in Limerick after the quarter-final loss to Dublin. We all hear about Caroline Kerr coming back on board. What influence will she have on the team this year? So I think mentally, if the game does go down the stretch, I think Limerick are probably, they've done it. We've seen it against Clare. We've seen it against Cork, where they've had to dig it out. They've shown how good they are in them scenarios. I think for Galway to win, they probably do need a bit of a cushion going down the last 10 minutes. But I think for Limerick, if that game is nip and tuck going into the last couple of minutes, you would have to back them based on the records of the years gone by. Yes, they are probably a little bit leggier than they have been because of age and miles on the clock. But it's just the mentality and I suppose the attitude to never give up. That has to be kind of applauded in this Limerick team, especially.
No, absolutely. Des, get you in here, I suppose. Who you tipping to win Liam McCarthy at 5 o'clock on Sunday evening?
I'm going to go with Limerick. I think Limerick are going to be able to deal with what Galway, they know what they're dealing with from the start. And that's where I think Limerick will get the grips of it early doors, put Galway under pressure, then the mistakes will start to come from the Galwayers, turnovers, and then the Limerick, I think, will wear them down that way. And as I said, the only chance Galway have of winning that game is if they stay in the game. To me, I disagree with Kieran. I think if Galway are in that game after 50 minutes, I can't see Galway being bet, because I just think Galway will have the legs, they'll get the belief, and they'll start carrying ball. And then, when you've a team, and I played in a great Owler team, we all aged at the very same time. We had so many lads that played for 10, 12, 15 years together. And when our legs went, it basically went in one game in regard of we declined, pretty quick in regard of when there's so many lads at the one age. It doesn't matter whether they're the fittest men in the world. It's just the miles on the clock. It does catch up with you. You need, and that's the worry for me for Limerick, is the age profile. It is the athleticism. That's the worry in regard of. But I do think, agree with Kieran, I think they have the mentality, and I think they have the ball winners in the forward, especially that Cork didn't have. Like, apart from Brian Hayes, who got 7 points in play, Cork had no ball winners in that forward line. I don't know how Declan Dalton wasn't on in the panel. I don't know how Seamus Harnedy wouldn't have been used, because to me, Galway are lacking that. You see the match up going back to the Dublin and Galway match up in Salt Hill. Galway couldn't deal with the long ball in. Dublin got 2 or 3 goals in that match with Ronan Hayes and John Heatherton, with only basically a long ball. And Dublin thought this was great then, and that's where Dublin lost out, because they kept doing stuff like that. So I do think for Limerick, it's the aerial ball, early doors, getting a few goals. That's where they'll win it. So I'm going to take Limerick, but I wouldn't be surprised, because I'm really impressed with Galway. I think whoever their coach is, and I think Galway are the best coach team in the country at the minute, because to me, they're not in the top 4 or 5 teams on paper, but their system is, and people, it's not that their system is unreal, it's just nobody knows how to deal with it yet. The teams will know how to deal with it in the next few years, and it'll go. But at the minute, Galway's system is the best system for that team. I think I read an article last week. They went through it in regard of they probably don't have an outstanding inside top. Like Rabbit is a good player, but he's not a top player. They don't have one outstanding top player in the inside forward line. And that's where I think they went with legs and athleticism out the field, get our shots off, and we won't be delivering as much ball. Whereas Limerick have probably the inside threat to deliver more ball. So I'll go with Limerick, but I hope Galway win. Sorry, Kieran.
You all right, Des?
No worries, do we have to ask for your prediction, Kieran Collins?
Next time Des rings looking for something, he'll be waiting for. I'm going to go at Limerick. I think there's one more in them. I do think if Limerick can win this year, I do think it'll be the last, because I think they have been just getting over the line in games. I think the record in finals is one that can't be ignored. 17 from 18. I think mentally they'll be there. I think they've as far as I know, no injuries come into the game. Everyone will be in top form. I think they know how to handle for Galway and for a lot of the players. Okay, Micheál Dunne, who's been there, and there has been a few players were there in 2017-18, but for a lot of this panel, they've never experienced an All Ireland day. When things happen, how they happen, the noise like that. If you've been to an All Ireland, just to walk around before the game and the noise is just, it puts the hair standing in the back of your neck. Sometimes the occasions gets the players. I think, okay, there is a few, I suppose, Limerick players who haven't experienced that. The younger guys, the likes of Adam English, but they have been around. They've all been around the panel for a couple of years, so they've been in around it. This big day for the likes of your Rabbits and Darren Eries and Rory Burke, if he does play, Aaron Nyland. It's like only a year or two ago they were playing with their school in Croke Park. It's kind of like Darren McCarthy last year. The jump they've taken in 1 or 2 years, it's huge. They've gone from the bottom of the ladder to the top. It's a big occasion. I'm not saying they can't handle it, but it is a factor. I'm going to go Limerick just with the experience. I do think they'll need to hit Galway early, because I think if Galway get a run on Limerick, like Clare did in the first half, Limerick could not deal with it. So I think Limerick need to stamp their game, stamp their authority in the game early on and put Galway in the back foot, and then you might see question marks start to come in on their system, as we call it. I think it will be a really, really close game, and I'm Limerick by 1 or 2.
I think it's a fascinating final. Just immediate concern, because I am based here in Galway. The vibe I'm getting from Galway is that first 15-20 minutes, what Des you've alluded to. I'm thinking about 2007 All Ireland hurling final when Limerick played Kilkenny, and again it was a bit of a kind of, dare I say, setup where Limerick came in with euphoria, that Waterford All Ireland semi-final win, and then within the 7 minutes of the start of the All Ireland final, Kilkenny had drilled 2 goals and 3 points in. Game was over. I think for Galway to win, I think the first 10-15 minutes is going to be absolutely key, and I do worry a little bit about Daithí Burke in terms of the half-back line, in terms of his movement, because you could see Aidan O'Connor, you could see Cian Lynch really stretching him. So, look, I think for Galway to win here, if they can settle down 15-20 minutes, I think all bets are off. But yeah, look, I think Tom Morrissey's post-game and preview, they said, look, they were going to enjoy the occasion. I think pressure is somewhat off Limerick here, because getting to the All-Ireland hurling final, this group are really embracing the occasion. I think, Kieran, you've kind of alluded to here, maybe one of the last intercounty appearances for some of these guys, and they're coming to basically enjoy it, and enjoying it means playing freely. And I think Limerick have shown threats in terms of stringing together a consistent 70-minute performance. Maybe Croke Park will get that on Sunday. But again, Galway have to really focus on performance, much like Limerick. I'll give it to Limerick based on experience, but again, would not be at all surprised here, guys, if Galway won this, because I do like the look of this time. The scoring distribution is quite decent. And again, the bench impact, as you said here, Des, as well. You can't forsake the likes of a Conor Cooney, Brian Concannon to come in, put a 1-2, 1-3 cameo in the last 5-10 minutes when the game's in the melting pot. I think this is fascinatingly poised. And I mean, there's no real excuses here, guys, is there? I mean, whether it's going to be picture perfect, an awful lot of scoring opportunities, and who's to say we might get extra time here on Sunday?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I suppose with that, guys, we might leave it there. Many thanks for your time, Kieran, as always. And Des, many thanks for coming on as well. Best of luck with all art for the rest of the year anyway. And
yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, I hope to see you back on the podcast very soon. I suppose next week We'll run the rule over the All Ireland final, look at it half by half, see where the key turning points were, and kind of reflect on the year as a whole. Until then, guys, enjoy the game, enjoy Croke Park, guys. I know, Kieran, you'll be going. Des and myself are probably anxiously looking for tickets to emerge. But until then, guys, have a great weekend and enjoy the game. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, cheers, thanks very much. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.